Greetings, Internet! Welcome back to Mike and Matt's fabulous Comic Watchers show, a part of Comic Watch Incorporated. Not really. Well, yes, really, but not the incorporated part. This is Mike, I'm Matt, and welcome back. We have this week a very cool guest with us, writer, raconteur, and cartoonist of some renown.
Mr.
Like Kyle Starks. You know him from the 6 Sidekicks of Trigger Keaton, Sex Castle, and a whole mess of Rick and Morty and Invader Zim comics from back in the day. Yeah. We're here to talk this week about his new comic coming next week from Image and Skybound. It's called I Hate This Place, which is an awesome title, but that's not as awesome as the book's original title, which was Fuck This Place, which is also awesome. Right there on the cover, big as life. Kyle, welcome to Comic Watchers show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always fun to talk some comics. Some stuff.
I mean, if it weren't fun for you to talk some comics, I would hesitate to say that you're in the wrong business. Because people are going to want to talk comics with you.
Sometimes.
So, and this is a pretty cool comic. It's funny. It's got some pretty cool horror elements to it. Talk about what I Hate This Place is all about.
Yeah, I Hate This Place. I love the elevator pitch introduction to any project. It's like all the pressure is on me. Don't mess up this elevator pitch for the people who don't know, because we want them to buy it. Please, Kyle, don't mess it up. So the elevator pitch is basically this young couple inherits a ranch. And when they arrive, it's the worst place on earth. It's haunted. There's lights in the sky. There's something terrible in the woods. And it seems like they're probably trapped there. And that is the gist of I Hate This Place / Fuck This Place. Both titles are available. If you want the dirty word title, you'll have to ask your retailer for it, probably. They'll have to order it special for you. But we pitched it as Fuck This Place, and we love it as Fuck This Place. But we did not consider about having profanity on a public area.
Sure.
So, but we love Fuck This Place. We love it as Fuck This Place. So you can get that. It's going to be the variant cover for every issue. So you just have to ask for it. Yeah, we love it. We love it.
So, you've kind of going back over your resume and your backlog and all this good stuff. Unless I missed something, this is your first foray into horror comics.
It's not my first foray into horror necessarily, because I just put out a book called Old Head in October from Image Comics that has Dracula and some monsters in it. But it's definitely my first non-humorous book. It's straight horror. There is humor elements, but I think that's just how I would say my favorite things, my favorite funny thing in film was always the bad action movie jokes, the bad puns. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't make Commando a comedy. It just adds something charming to it, right? So
right.
There are things I can't resist. They make the characters more likable, and I think it makes it realer in certain ways. So it's not a humorous book to me. It's not a comedy book. So it's my first non-comedy book. It happens to be horror. So that's my answer to that. But it is brand new for me. I'm trying something brand new, and apparently it's my most successful thing. So what does that say? I don't know.
I got to tell you, having read the first issue, you definitely have a mastery of how to work a horror story on the page, which is really hard to do, because horror on film, of course, you can control the flow of information and how the viewer takes it in, and to a degree, you can sort of be the puppet master of the fear itself. It's harder to do that in a comic.
For sure. I mean, right? you can still do it in a comic. I say, because there's a reason why I love horror. I love action comedy. I love action movies, but I love action comedies. But the thing about horror is that horror is very similar in storytelling to comedy. It's all about tone. It's about pacing. It's about setups and payoffs. The real challenge, I think, in the difference between horror and film is you can't do a jump scare. You'll never have the benefit of having a jump scare or like gore being done in a very visceral way, because there's unless the artist, I mean, the artist would have to be nightmare good, right? Because when you see it in film and it's like, oh, it's moving and it's pulsating, like that can be implied. But there's certain things like that. There's certain tricks that you can always do in a horror. A jump scare, you can always do in a horror movie. I think I've seen a jump scare done one time in a comic, and I may only remember, but I think it's in Lock and Key. I'm almost certain that Joe Hill pulled off a page turn jump scare. It's hard to do. So sure. I think like it's a different type of horror storytelling. And I'm no horror comics like aficionado, but I feel like it's always been that way. It's always been more sort of like tone, like a tone horror. And all that stuff I'm trying to take into account, like my plans for where this story goes. I think like each arc will sort of navigate into a different tone and style. And so I think by the time we get to where I hope to go, it will feel very visceral. Like it'll feel like a very specific type of genre. And I'm excited to sort of go through all of those sort of moves to get there. So but yeah, I'm doing scary stuff. Oh boy, I'm doing it good. So issue two, I feel like has like, it has 2 great scares in it, like 2 great bits of stuff I haven't seen done in comics before. Nice. And that was a lot of it is like, you know, I wanted to do stuff that I hadn't seen before that I thought still worked based on sort of like familiar tropes and the like. I know I'm still answering the same question, but I think it's such a good and interesting one. And it also, even more so, is like horror is like huge right now.
Yeah.
In comics, it's like, which as someone who's done niche, like non-mainstream genres, like it's thrilling to see anything. If it could have been Westerns or pirate comics or mysteries, you know, like it's so nice to see the market expand, even if it's just one thing for a minute. So like James Tynion, like what's that? Everything he does is great horror. There's a bunch of it. Like there's a bunch of great horror stuff right now. So I think people are really like
Cullen Bunn. I mean, he's made an entire career out of horror. So you know, if you get it, you get it. Mike, why don't you go ahead and jump in, man?
Yeah.
Ask me, Mike.
Yeah, I'm nerd. No. You hit on the unknown a lot in this book. You hit on some, you know, putting in all the familiar tropes, and when playing with the characters and the unknown and kind of working on the fear that we're setting up when Gabby and Trudy get to their new abode and everything. As the story's fleshing out through the series, how is that kind of almost like Matt said, being almost like a puppet master with the characters and building up and kind of, because to me, I think some of the best horror is psychological horror.
For sure.
What you don't see, you know, or what you think you see or what you're dreaming. So how was that with the characters and kind of setting that up as the series went on, you got to know the characters and kind of what they're saying to you and stuff?
Yeah, I think there's 2 different answers to that. One is that this first, like the exposition of any sort of beginning horror story is all discovering the unknown. Like, what is the situation? What are we in? Right. So this first arc, like 5-issue arc, is sort of setting up the location, and it's not explaining it. It's not necessarily explaining anything. I really want people to sort of want to ride along to figure out what's going on. Why is Rutherford Ranch like this? Which is to say, why is everything awful here, but not other? Like, why is there only one place that this is happening? Right. So definitely, like that is to me, that's very much part of horror. Is that like I always like I'm not scared of werewolves. Like if I was in a werewolf movie, I would die first because I'd open the back door and be like, "See, guys, it's nothing," and then like my head would be taken off. Like those type of, like I don't have like those to me are interesting. Like a great monster, like the Host, or even any like traditional like slash. Like a great monster is a great monster. Yeah. And if you make a great monster, it'll carry you through stuff, right? So we love that. Yeah. But once you see the monster, it has to be so good. Like it has to be so well thought out. So there's always that sort of the unknown and establishing it. So that's part one. And 1A is that sort of the great thing about this setting is that I can do any horror. Like I've set it up, like it exists in a way I can do anything. Right. And I was like, well, I might only have to do one horror. I want to do all the horrors. But that being said, so there's some sort of dark entity in the wood. There's monsters in the woods, guys. I don't want to spoil it, but there's monsters in there's tons of monsters in the woods, right? All right. Yeah. Spoilers. There's maybe UFO stuff. There's definitely haunting stuff. Like I can do all this stuff, but this is just like issue 1, right? I mean, my intention is like we're going to do so many issues and more things are going to come into play. And I'm definitely more interested personally in psychological fears. My earbuds, I'm just going to poke at my earbuds over and over.
No worries.
So for me, like here's these 2 characters. So Gabby and Trudy, who are married and they love each other. They're happily married, which we love that. We never get to see that in fiction. Gabby is an eternal optimist. She's the silver lining type. It's her family who acquired this ranch. And Trudy, who's her wife, is very much a pragmatic survivalist. She's a doomsday prepper and everything has a solution. Well, I just took these people, these very nice people, these very happy people who are trying to start the second stage of their life and put them in a place where there is no silver lining and there's nothing you can prepare for. So like, to me, that's as interesting as What's in the Woods. And how they're going to sort of emotionally, like for me, my thing is like, if I suddenly found myself in this terrible place, there's back matter. I write a thing in the back of the comic about how in 2022, there's always a solution. Like I can always Google if my dishwasher didn't empty all the way. I Googled it. Oh, run it again. You know what I mean? Like if I'm sick, I go to the doctor. If my dishwasher or if something breaks, you get it fixed, right? But they're not everything. Like where they are now, there's no answer. Like you Google, what do you do about ghosts? Like what do you do if you inherit a monster ranch? You know, like there's no answer. And so like just yesterday, I point upstairs, like because I'm in my shelter, obviously, my underground bunker. My dog, one of my dogs, like hurt its leg and wouldn't get up, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to take the dog to the vet, and I'm here by myself. I don't have any help. My dad died in December, so I can't be like, I'll call my dad. So my thing is like that. You think it's a 60-pound dog that doesn't like to be picked up, and I'm like, I have 2 other dogs that are gonna rush out. So I'm like, how do I physically get a dog into my car? And like that's scary to me. Like that's upsetting to me. Yeah. So for these characters to be in that type of situation literally every day, to me is really frightening. And worse than that, you're in perpetual danger, and the one person you care about most is not only there, you brought them here. Right. You brought them here with you. Like you did this to them. That to me is like real horror, but also monsters in the woods. Ghosts that have murder touch. Like it's bad.
There's, for all of the horror elements to I Hate This Place, there's a real core of a lived in loving relationship between your 2 leads, and it's great because they you can tell how and why they balance each other out, right? Like how did you come to these characters? How did they become your stars?
Well, my thing is always story first. It's the story is the thing before anything. So like, for example, I Hate This Place, the Rutherford Ranch. Am I gonna make a body function? No, I didn't do it. That was a secret. You guys didn't see anything. So like I had heard about this place on a podcast called Skinwalker Ranch, which is in Utah. It's a real place. It's an actual place. Yeah. So you know about this, Mike?
Yeah. I've heard about Skinwalker. Yeah.
So Skinwalker Ranch is very similar. It's a paranormal nexus. It has lights in the sky. It has weird monsters. It has these Native American witch devil things. Really? It has cryptids. It has cryptids. And the thing is, when I heard about this place, I thought, 1, isn't it crazy that I only heard about this place now? 2, there's no stories that do, like, I've never heard of a place that has everything. I've never heard of a story that's like, oh, it's haunted and there's a Bigfoot. Like, I haven't even heard that, right? So I was like, this is so interesting to me as a setting. But a setting to me is nothing. A setting is nothing. Right. It's just window dressing, right? And it's funny because I'd heard about this like right before New York Comic Con. This would have been, let's say 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I can't remember. And Robert Kirkman, Daddy Kirkman, always comes and says very nice things to me. He comes and visits me, says nice things. And the thing is, I was thinking about this, and I'm like, is this a dumb set? Like, because my thing is like, why is it like that? And then what's going to happen what happens here is the story, right? Like, not the setting. I'm going a long way, so I apologize to get to the answer. No,
that's fine.
So I'm like, hey, Kirkman, listen to this. What do you think about this setting? It's a ranch. It has monsters. This. I think maybe like this is what happens. And he's like, I love it. And I'm like, that's cool. And he's like, we could do it right now. And I'm like, I did not pitch a story. I said like, what if I describe New York City to you? You know what I mean? And he's like, oh, I love it. I love New York City. And And when the pandemic happened, I reached out and I was like, hey, you know, I'd love some work because there's no conventions. I'm not getting that sweet Rick and Morty money, convention money. And he was like, oh, you should do that thing you pitched me at New York. And I'm like, I did not pitch you anything. I asked you like a nice question. So to me, it's like, well, I like the setting because, as I said, it's going to allow me to do a bunch of different horror stuff. And I'm really interested in that. I'm really interested in seeing horror sort of bump into each other, right? Mm-hmm. All that's really interesting to me as a fan of the genre and as a fan of storytelling. But then you go, well, who's there and what's going to happen to them? But also more so, how do those characters, because they are the story, right? Like it can't be arbitrary.
We have to care about them.
You have to care about it, but also like what they do as living creatures. Like Trudy has to be a survivalist for the sake of the story. She has to. One, I think it's an interesting quandary just for her to go through, which is good window dressing. But also, it gives me someone who has some level of skills that can be useful for certain parts of the story. Gabby's arc is more complicated, so all these things were thought out. But once you get past all that, then it's like, well, now we're going to tell the story. And sort of the most important thing with me, with all my characters, is I want them to be likable. Likable is tough. I want you to want to spend time with these characters, and I want them to seem real. And in this case, for the sake of horror, you want to like these characters. I want people to like these characters because I'm going to do awful things to them. Yeah. And part of horror is if you don't like these characters, like you'll be like fucking dude had it coming, right? Like that's like who cares? Like that's like they deserve it. Like so I really endeavored to that, and you're not the first people to say that. Like it does feel like a real cult, which is like, you know, as a writer, that's what we endeavor to do. I think they feel like real people. I've really thought about them. I know their past, like because of the story I want to tell, like their entire lives and their entire lives going forward is sort of cyclical and matters. Mm-hmm. So I know a lot about them, but they were made that way because of the type of story I wanted to tell, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mike?
Yeah, for sure. Keep it on the characters. Trudy feels like she is like probably going to end up being like the strong character of the story without, you know, spoilers and stuff. And she doesn't seem like she's the same character in a horror story that just wants to jump out the window and kind of take care of the bad guys. You know, like we just got to talking about, you know, she's very, all these characters are likable, but with Trudy, it seems like there's a certain strength to her character that she's kind of almost like a protector of Gabby and stuff like that. So where does Trudy get her strength from? And without spoilers, is she going to be a character that kind of you get to see more as the series goes on, if possible? Or
I mean, you're going to just see these girls more than anything else. It's really going to revolve around them. Again, again, let me come back around to this because I'm such. So I just did it. We did Skybound Expo. It's pre-recorded, guys. It's not live. And one of the questions was like, oh, who are your writing influences? And I was like, oh, well, here's my current story, because I've consumed so much things. I used to work at a bookstore that also did movie rentals and did comic book. Like I got to consume everything, and I still do it now. Some days, like, what do you like? Are you watching this show? And I'm like, my TV's on like literally all the time, like right here. Like unless I'm writing, it's on. I watch everything. Like I try to consume everything. It's insane. But I loved Preacher. I loved Garth Ennis's Preacher. Nice. And my remembrance of Garth Ennis's Preacher was what a complicated, well-composed pieces where everything sets up everything and everything matters. Mm-hmm. There were no accidents, right? This is my remembrance of it because things at the beginning come back around.
Absolutely.
And that concept has very much shaped me as a writer. I don't do anything on accident. Because of that, it makes me very crazy. And how deep a story is makes me more and more crazy. And this is a very deep one. Hold that. I reread Preacher like a year and a half ago. He's making it up as he goes along. I was traumatized to be a writer that doesn't get sleep at night because every little puzzle piece has to connect. When the guy who did it to me, like he's just making it up as he goes along. He just does such a great job. So everything matters. Nothing is an accident. Right. Both of their lives, their past which is all of us. Everything that happened to us to point A is like, oh, this is why this person's my wife is my wife. She's my soulmate. And I can look back through my life and go, oh, ding, 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 ding. These things happen. And so can she, right?
Right.
So Gabby, I think on first blush, you'd be like, Gabby is sweet and innocent. And she requires a protector. But that's not necessarily the case. But Trudy is someone who I don't want to give away. This is like stuff that's like next. It's second arc stuff. Will be revealed because you learn more about their families after we establish the ranch, and we can then establish the characters and new worse threats, right? So yeah, Trudy 1 is very much a protector. She's someone she can take care of herself. She loves Gabby, which is more than she's like Gabby's helpless. But I think there's probably a little bit of that because Gabby is to her, sort of a sweet little sunshine. Like she's the reason why you want to stay alive. And Trudy's entire life has been sort of training to stay alive. So yeah, there's a bit in issue 1 where I hope that it's been a while where Trudy shoots a ghost. And did this happen? Okay. And Gabby's like, did you just shoot a ghost? And Trudy's like, you never know what you can shoot until you shoot it. And I think that's very much Trudy's sort of like, because that comes up, it will come up again later. That is not a one-time bit. Like I said, nothing's accidental. And so like that's Trudy. Trudy's like, there's a checklist, right? You shoot things, you shoot them first. I'm going to do, in the upcoming issues, I'm going to do these little comic strips, which are Gabby and Trudy before the ranch. So sort of like these slice of life things that are not horror. They're just going to be very sweet, sort of revealing, charming moments that either set something up in that issue or the next issue, or it just establishes something about the characters. But also, like, I think it shows we should always see, like, these are just normal girls. They were just normal girls who in love, who had shitty jobs in some shitty city before they came here. And now they're trapped in a terrible place, right? And I love that. I think that's really interesting. I hope I answered that question. I went a long way.
No, that's cool.
I totally answered it. I nailed it.
Yeah. Let me tell you, you make our job so much easier.
I know. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
No worries. No, it's great. It's great listening to you for sure.
Because then instead of having to come up with new questions after three word sentence answers,
no, I can't. I wish
going. We get to just sit here and nod and and then 10 minutes later, we're like, that was real, and see the conversation just flows naturally, and we all love each
everything's other. There's a real. You guys are asking questions that there's been real consideration for. So I want to make sure that's established. People know we're serious about it. We're taking care of business over here.
Absolutely.
It's a great book, by the way.
Thanks, man. I love hearing that because I'm so anxious about it because like when I do comedy or I do action comedy, I'm 100% confident. Like I know what I'm doing. I think my books would be fun. Like, humor is such a bad word in comics. People don't want to read it. And I think that's fair, especially in the direct market. Like the big two have burned people with humor so many times where it's not funny, it's gaggy or it's low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
So I get it. Like horror is like, or comedy is a dirty word, but it's like I know I'm good at it, and I think if you read my comedy stuff, if you read Sex Castle or if you read Rock Candy Mountain, which is like these, or if you read Six Sidekicks, like you'd be like, this is great. Like I think anyone would think they're funny or entertaining or amusing, but the horror, like. Again, I can look at it practically and go, I know this is good. These are the beats, but it's my first one, right? So how people consume it and then what the reception is, like, it's been great. It's been great, thankfully. It's very anxious to me because like I feel like I did a good job. I think I know I did a good job, but until everyone says it, until 30,000 people say it or whatever, even then I'm like, I'm trying. I don't know. I hope I keep it up.
For sure. No, it definitely worked. I mean, we already hit on this earlier, but I mean, just with so many genres, in the book, and I mean, it all works. I mean, it's great flow. The characters. We want to know more about the characters. We want to be side by side with the characters and stuff like that. So, yeah.
We love it.
So let's get into influences a little bit because you immediately piqued my interest when you said Preacher because that's my personal all-time favorite. And you're absolutely right when you say that throughout the series, it feels like every choice was extremely deliberate, and Garth Ennis magically thought this thing out 50 issues in advance and knew exactly where it was going. And he didn't. Nobody's that good. Maybe Alan Moore 30 years ago. I don't know, but
I think more people do it. Alan Moore, I think for sure. I think probably like a Grant Morrison. I think those guys. Nothing's accidental, but. Yeah, it's not the way to do it. It's bad. It's bad for. I just got asked to do a pitch, and I was like, I figured out the whole story. I'm like, I need to know how many issues. I need to know how many pages. And Chris Schweitzer, who's sort of my virtual studio mate, he's my artist. He's my artist on Six Sidekicks and my Mars Attacks run. he was like, what are you doing? He's like, just sort of give him a general idea. And I'm like, no, like I can't give a general idea because then if they approve it, I'll be like, well, I don't know what that is. So I'm like, great, I'm building this story. I'm building this complicated story. And he's like, don't do that. And I'm like, he's like, it's too much work. Like if they didn't pay you to do it. I'm like, I can't help. I just can't help it. And I do not recommend. I do not recommend. But I think it makes my stories good. I think it makes them enjoyable and good is because I put so much effort into it.
Yeah.
And I like stuff like that. My thing is like when I consume a story, I like it when there are Easter eggs that matter. I like it when things in the background matter. I like it when you go, oh, that happened. Like that's the thing they did earlier comes back around.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Like that's the type of stories I like to consume. And because of that, like that's what I'm making, right? Which means all those things have to be there that add a lot of work rather than guy just walks through the woods and something happens in the woods. Like that's an easier story. I can't do that one. I mean, I can, but it's gonna be very complicated. Unnecessarily complicated on my end.
Well, I think 100
Bullets is great.
Is a really good example of what you're talking about. Like, there's stuff that is you can just tell Azzarello planned pretty much every arc for that story in advance, and stuff 60, 70 issues in that was referenced back in like a third issue comes back around. So, I mean, there's definitely a jujitsu to it. I couldn't do it. My brain doesn't work that way. Although when you don't do that, just as from a craft perspective, you run the risk of going out on a limb and not realizing that you've gone on a limb until you wound up painting yourself into a corner mix metaphor. But I think that's what a good editor's for. And you've worked with the good folks at Skybound several times now, so you must.
Book 3, if you don't count the Dr. Pepper comic.
Do what?
I said it's book 3 is if you don't count the Dr. Pepper comic.
Yeah. What's the Dr. Pepper comic?
We did a Dr. Pepper comic. Did a Dr. Pepper. Skybound did a. I feel like no one's told me not to talk about the Dr. Pepper comic, so I am.
That's awesome.
Oh yeah,
I might have it.
That's
see if I have it. Hold on.
That's so killer.
So here's the gist of the. Is it right here? Oh. So the gist is they did this Dr. Pepper comic. I'm not gonna be able to find it. I should have thought about it before. I'm not gonna be able to find it. Anyway, so Dr. Pepper asked Skybound to do a comic book. And so they were like, hey, Kyle, do you want to write a Dr. Pepper comic? And I was like, my kids love Dr. Pepper. Why not? Like my wife and my kids love Dr. Pepper. I'll write this Dr. Pepper comic. And it was when they were doing the sort of time travel Dr. Pepper, like he was literally Dr. Pepper. They did like 3 commercials. And they were going to print this comic out and they were going to hand it out at San Diego Comic-Con. Luca Cloretti was the artist. He did a killer job. Like it's so good. It's the best licensed book ever made. I want to say that because no one can see it, but also I think it's true. And for whatever reason, they printed them, never handed them out. I assume there's like tens of thousands of copies of this Dr. Pepper comic in a warehouse somewhere. It never made it to San Diego. I think they're on eBay.
There's just a Raiders
I have like
style
10 or 15
warehouse
of them
somewhere.
It's not even Skybound. It's like whoever the marketing team, whoever the marketing firm for Dr. Pepper has it. That's who has it. So we did that too. And frankly, it was a great experience. It was an amazing, like it was super fun. Luca did it. Luca's working on something legit, like some big 2 book, I think right now. I can't think of what it is. He did a killer, like just like way too much work. And it's great. Yeah. So this is my 3rd book, not counting. Yes, it's my 3rd book, not counting the Dr. Pepper comic with Skybound. I like Skybound a lot. John Moisen was my editor on all of them. I like John. He's cool. It's been fun. I like Skybound. I got nothing bad. I got only good things to say about him.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, like my interactions with them have always been really super positive. They're just pleasant to work with, even on the sort of tangential level that I'm at. Very open and friendly, and yeah, I imagine they're cool people to work for.
Yeah,
we love a lot of good books, right? I mean, they just have kind of that good vibe about them where it's hard to pick something from them that just doesn't hit on some level.
I agree. I think like they have a good catalog. I'm lucky to have been that they're willing to try me out, and they've definitely like championed me as a creator, which I love.
Yeah,
because my huge ego, and I just want to be loved so badly. But yeah, I mean, you look like, comedy doesn't sell, so they let me do 2 comedy series. And then they let me do something I've never done before. And it's like, you got to love that from a publisher, and you got to love that from an editor who's willing to do the work in those multitude of different ways.
Yeah.
John Moisen's a big horror guy. He's doing like Stillwater. He's the editor on Stillwater and Redneck. So, he's like, which also to Redneck sort of precursor, I think, sort of the modern sort of trend. Like, that's a dope horror book. Stillwater is so good. It's so good.
I really like that book. Yeah.
I really like it too. It's such a clever premise. The artist is incredible. Anyway, yeah. So Skybound's great, man.
Deceptively simple, right? Like, there's this town where nobody ages, and it turns into this existential horror comic.
As soon as I saw Chip was doing a book about a town where I'm like, I'm in. Like, I don't even care. I'm in. This is such a good. I'm so mad that I didn't come up with the idea first. And like Chip will do a better job than I did, or would.
Yeah, definitely. So let's backpedal a little bit to we talked about your comic influences somewhat, but what about your horror influences? Because there's a lot of stuff here at play. So
yeah,
I can see this going in a lot of ways.
I just got asked, it was like, similar question, like, where did your love of horror come from? And I'm like, shit, I don't think I know for sure. Because when I was little, I definitely wasn't like a little kid. Because I think most people, like, you come up through it. Like, you love horror when you're little. You love monsters when you're little. You want to read like scary stories, to read in the dark with those awful drawings. And like, I didn't. My dad watched a lot of Schwarzenegger. I watched a lot of pro wrestling. I remember seeing The Fly on VHS. Like, we went to go visit one of my family friends, and they had it on the VHS in the other room. And I was kind of like looking at like through a door, like a entryway. And I was like, this is the scariest shit I've ever seen. By the way, I can't do body horror.
Yes.
If you see body horror, I'm out. As soon as I'm out. So like, whenever it's like, hey, is this movie good? They're like, oh yeah. And I'm like, is there body horror? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, I'll never watch it, because I know that's the thing. I can't truck with it. So someone just asked me, like, where did you love? And it's like, man, I know for a fact, I really started watching horror as an adult, but I can't pinpoint it. Since I've been married 16 years. I'm like, it's my wife doesn't watch horror. So I've watched it privately, and I figured out what it was. I have a friend, Benito Sereno, who's going to be writing back matter for ongoing. Hopefully, he's a horror guy, and he does this yearly list. Now, 7, 8, 9 years ago, it's a list of what's streaming, and he does it during October. So it's like, if you want to watch a scary movie in October, here's what's streaming. And what he used to do, he lists all the movies, and if it was like one that he strongly recommended, he'd put, I strongly recommend, and he'd separate them, like, these are zombies, these are hauntings, like, this one's a classic. And my thing was like, oh, I've never heard of most of these. I've definitely not seen them. And I started watching his strong recommendations. And from there, it's like, I watch everything. If it's horror, as long as it's a body horror, I always ask. And Benito will tell me. Benito will say, you don't watch this. Like, I love M. Night Shyamalan. I've always loved M. Night Shyamalan.
Sure.
Which is horror adjacent, I guess. It's supposed to be horror. I don't know. And you can see in my work too, because boy, he loves a twist. I love a twist. But like, for this new movie, and they're like, oh, I just saw a new movie, and I'm like, is it good? And he's like, you can't watch it. There's body horror in it. And I'm like, oh. But you know what? He's right. I don't want to see that. The Fly ruined me when I was a little kid. I know exactly what got me. This is The Fly, man.
Damn you, Cronenberg.
It's definitely something, and I've gone, like, I for sure never watched. I watched like Nightmare on Elm Street when I was a teen, but like, I didn't watch all of them. And as an adult, though, I've seen, like, I never watched Halloween until I was an adult. I never watched. I almost said Michael Myers, like, they're not the same thing. The Friday the all those movies, Friday the, like, eat the classics. Like, I saw Scream because I liked Justin Williamson, whoever the writer was. I can't think of his name now. The guy who did
I know who you mean.
Does he do that CW show? The great. With who cares? You guys, it's from the past. It's from the past. But I really liked it as a writer. So it's like, I watched like Scream, and like, it's like, I never loved horror, I think, until I was probably in my late 30s.
Kevin Williamson.
See, I was close. What was the CW show he did? The teen
Vampire
romance.
Diaries.
No, that's his modern one. The one he did the first thing he did was it had Joshua Jackson in it. His first
Ooh.
Joshua Jackson. Oh,
I know what you're. I can picture it in
it's
my
gonna
mind.
be
Dawson's Creek, baby.
Dawson's Creek. Yeah, so Dawson's Creek was like he did that, and then he did horror movies. And like
Yeah.
one, I love that. You know, I
What a
love like
pivot,
when someone's
right?
like, yeah, it's like, hey, I did this thing, I did, which is me right now, maybe, right? It's like I love the idea of somebody like, oh, hey, I did that funny, sort of charming teen romance, but also, what if I did the same thing but killed all the teens? Like, what if I did the exact
I
opposite?
killed Drew Barrymore.
Killed the shit out of her. That's a great opener. Like that's a
absolutely, because well, it was just she was all over the marketing for that movie.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
You expected her to be the final girl.
Nope. So good.
Yeah.
Even if even if it wasn't Drew Barrymore, even if you removed Drew Barrymore, that's a great opening. But it being Drew Barrymore in that moment was so good. So yeah, definitely like in the last 5 or 6 years, like I got Shudder. I try to watch as many things on Shudder as I can. I try to watch classics as much as I can. So it's a late onset thing, and it's because I got good recommendations once. Benito Serrano is I think at Benito Serrano on Twitter, and he has a Patreon. You get that. It's so good. It's worth it. It used to be so in depth because there's less streaming that it was it was irreplaceable. If you loved horror movies and you wanted to hear what was good, and as a rule, like I said, if I see him mention something, I check it out. I gotta find it. I gotta check it out. So that's where I am now. I don't think I didn't have sort of like that forming youth sort of, because I was watching action. It's always been action movies and comedies and classics. Like I was never like a drama or horror guy, or even sci-fi in a lot of ways. It's definitely something I came around to more as an adult. I assume the older I get, I'll be like, oh, I just want to watch dramas now. I just want to watch dramas from the 90s, like just, oh, mom's moving in. She's got Alzheimer's.
It's time to watch The Firm.
Yeah.
Hallmark Channel.
Yeah, I'll be a Hallmark guy. I'll be a real Hallmark guy when I'm older.
Oh, man.
But I'll be hard into it. I'll have facts about it.
You could be the guy tweeting out the lists of what all.
Yeah, I'll be the Hallmark guy. But it'll be at that time. It'll be like some sort of brain transmission. We won't be using Twitter then.
No, not at all. Soon, none of us may be using Twitter. We'll see. Mike, you are the major horror aficionado here. Do you want to jump in with that a little more than me?
I just
put me to shame, brother.
No, I do got to ask. I get in certain panels and certain scenes. There's a heavy. I sense there's a heavy like John Carpenter.
I would say John Carpenter, more than just this book, influenced me as a creator, because John Carpenter did something that I do or aspire to do, which is always, it's not the normal thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to make something that I'm not trying to necessarily make something that hasn't been seen before, because whenever, like John Carpenter, you want it to be familiar, but like, what's the other movie like They Live? What's the other movie like Big Trouble in Little China? And all of them, they're the characters are great, the action's great. There's just enough humor that it's charming, and like John Carpenter is like for sure like an inspiration. I think Edgar Wright, I would say too, because he does genre mashing, which I love. I love genre mashing. I love how it seems like it's going to be something familiar, but it's not. Those are things that really interest me, because again, I'm trying to make the stories that I want to consume, and those are the things that interest me. Is it's the things that are familiar to do twists on is hard, but it's also easier to make and to consume. So you go, like, even if you just change, like, oh, it's Seven Samurais, but now it's a war movie, which has been done. It's Seven Samurai movie or whatever. It's sort of an easy. It's a challenge, but it's like people are consuming the same thing that they know how to consume. And John Carpenter, like all that stuff, like there's nothing to me in my. I'd have to think hard. I am gut instincting at this moment, but there's nothing that is told in a way that other things are told. But it's great. It's fresh and it's different, and that's something I think I aspire to, is to make stuff that's off the beaten path, but still is not. It's still broad and easily consumable for any reader or viewer. I love John Carpenter. Also, like I'm a cartoonist, so when I started, like I just did everything. So like if I was making films, I'd be like, I got to get the Casio out and be like beep beep beep. I'm like, I don't know, I can't afford anybody. Like I can't afford anybody to do it, so it's going to be what it is. Beep beep beep. I love it. I love John Carpenter. He's that guy's a goat. I celebrate his entire catalog.
Oh, absolutely, and that's the great thing. One thing I loved about I Hate This Place was not only had like a great tempo, but you kind of found yourself like in the environment, like almost asking yourself, like, what would you do in this certain, like if you were
Yeah.
Gabby and Trudy and stuff like that, or what happens. Well, I don't, if you found the room, I don't want to say too much. Obviously, spoilers for what would happen because I want to know more about that room. But like, what would you do? And it was easy to kind of put yourself in the book. And I think this is one of those books that is definitely that can cross genre, even if you really don't like horror and stuff like that. I think folks are gonna just enjoy the shit out of this book really, really well.
Yeah, I really hope that's the case. Like I said, even with the comedy stuff, it the, like I'm not trying to make a thing for just one person, So you have
Right.
to work with a certain broadness. And like I did, like, hey, I don't like comedy books. It's like I don't know I don't either. I'm Kyle Starks. Like I like read these books though. Like they're not funny like that. Like they're just
Yeah.
it's a lot of things. There's action and there's character work and there's a heart. There's an undertoning heart. And this is the same way. It's like people are like, oh, like who do you think this is gonna appeal to? And I'm like, people who like good stories.
Mhm.
Like it's because it's like it's not like horror in that you're gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna have nightmares, or maybe
Right.
you will.
Right.
I guess you could.
Maybe at some point. I mean, maybe at some points, like I guess, like maybe I should want that. But it's like I'm telling a story. It's like I bet like if you ask Jordan Poole if he's like who was supposed to see Get Out, he's like everybody. It's great.
Yeah.
And I think like that's what I'm shooting for. And I bet Carpenter was the same way, even though I
Yeah.
bet Carpenter was like, hey, a lot of people think this is weird. He'd be like, well, it's not for the people who think it's weird. And he's not wrong, right? Like, but I feel like it has a broad appeal. I think I think if you like character and if you like dangerous situations and you like people reacting in real ways, which I think is what all good stories is here are normal people and something happens and now we watch them respond in an interesting way. That's this book.
Yeah.
Also, if you want to see terrible things done to nice people, it's also your book, but that's two different groups too, for sure.
Right. Sure. And it's one of those things where, like you said, if you want to see, a little bit of death and, maybe like a, quick, impalement, that's fine, because we're not talking about, and, Ed Piskor's, Red Room or something like that, which I absolutely love. But
yeah. That's a different direction for sure. If you're doing horror stuff, it's a much more visceral horror for sure. It's a much more visceral horror. This book, I mean, it opens with a murder and someone getting killed by a monster.
Right.
It's pretty visceral. I think all that stuff's going to get more visible once, because it's all exposition at this point. Like, so you're establishing it, so you don't want to see the monster, devour somebody in the first issue. You want to just know that a monster devoured somebody in the first issue. I'm not doing Red Room. That's too much for me. I bet there's body horror in that.
You don't like body horror. I don't think
if you don't like body horror, stay away. I remember I was 3 pages into Red Room and I'm blushing. Oh, sweet Jesus.
I mean, we're definitely going to do body horror because I think the best things you can do as if you're writing horror is to write the things that scare you, because you can impart that. So I mean, I don't like bugs. There's going to be bug stuff. There's going to be body horror. I was going to go through all that stuff.
And that's the cool thing I think I really love about horror and horror writers is if they're able to kind of, I don't want to say, I guess maybe in a sense become vulnerable because you're putting your own fears into your medium. I think that's great. And that adds an authenticity to the story, to the environment, and all that great stuff.
Absolutely. I think because that's like I was saying before, it's less about like, look, there's a giant bug and I'm scared of bugs.
No,
it's like, well, I'm scared of the ER too. It's not about what you're scared of. It's how you feel in these moments in these characters. Because like it's a big monster. It's like, sure, okay, but it's like I'd be more scared of getting out of the shower and there's a wasp in there. Like that's terrifying. I don't want to play that game. Or there's 5 wasps in there. Like even worse. Like like I'm dying. A big wasp, I could probably hide from that big wasp. 5 wasps in a bathroom, they're gonna get me, and I'm naked. My PP is exposed. Right. I know where this ends. So it's like, that's a lot. It's like I think like you really have to think about like what your fears are, what are scary situations, but more so how you would react to those scary situations. And like these are 2 different girls, and there's other people who will be involved. Some have been introduced in this first one. There's people who work on the ranch. all that stuff's going to come into play, and how these sort of react to the nature of this place, and even past that, sort of like I said, like just being in this place is upsetting enough and scary enough. I don't really, the loss of agency, like they can't leave where they are. Like little stuff like that's terrifying to me. More terrifying than there's something in the woods. Like, I mean, listen, they say don't go in the woods. That's said right there at the end of the book. Don't go in the woods. They're going to go in the woods. You know they're going in the woods, guys. Right. Issue 3, they go in the woods.
The like, picture I tweet.
Yeah, there's in fact you can see the cover for it. Well, I didn't know that cover had been released yet, but you can see like and there's a character there on the cover of 3. Like there's characters being introduced that again, like all characters, they exist to serve a certain function and to play a role to move and escalate the story. That guy is great. Spoilers, he's a ghost hunter. We love a ghost hunter showing up in a ghost book. Yeah, that's it, man. I got so many plans and so many stuff, and we've done 5 issues, and I think they're really strong 5 issues. And the tensions, it's an ongoing. So this is just arc 1, and arc 1 is, to me, what is Rutherford Ranch, and we're gonna lay it out, and we're not even laying all of it out. We're only laying out some of it, but that way, the thing is, like any horror movie, you go, oh, there's a Babadook in the basement, right? So that opening sequence, that's important, because then when the Babadook starts doing things, and who are these people, and there's a Babadook in the basement. When those things start crashing into each other, that's when the real fun starts. And I think it's paced fast. I think there's big action, which is fun. I think there's a lot of good things that I haven't seen before. It's going to be fun. It's going to be scary, and it's going to set up hopefully many more issues to come, because I got a lot of plans. If not at least 18 issues, guys, please buy at least 18 issues, because I'll only be happy if I get 18 issues. I get that good ending. I can rush to it. If I have to.
Well, I like hearing that you have a good, an ongoing plan, because I always get frustrated when modern comics will announce a hot new series and you're like, yes, I'm so psyched for this. And then after you get the first issue, you get to the back and it's like, and this will conclude at issue 5, and you'll never see this story or these characters again.
Sure.
Come on.
I've only done miniseries or OGNs. Right. I love a beginning, middle, and end. And the reason why I love the beginning, middle, and end is, one, as I said before, I'm crazy, and every puzzle piece has to go together. Because that's the type of story I like. I like things that, when you know, so for 6 Sidekicks, or no, Assassination. I don't know if you guys read Assassination. That was my first Skybound book. It was Erica Henderson. It's about the world's former greatest hitman. Someone's trying to kill him, so he hires the 20 best hitmen to be his bodyguards. They all die. Like everyone dies. Listen, spoilers. I'm killing everybody. And the thing is, to me, that's part of the story. There's no one precious here. Everyone's life is in danger. And I have that benefit because it's only a 6-issue, I think it's 5-issue series. With that miniseries, everything that happens in the story is stakes, right? If you think I can't do Spider-Man because he's safe, nothing really bad will ever happen to Spider-Man. Are certain characters related to, like, in the vicinity of Spider-Man, right? And if they do, people forgot, and they're back in 20 issues anyway, so it didn't matter. Like, even if it doesn't matter. So that type of story doesn't interest me. So even for this, like, we went in, it's like, it's gonna be an ongoing, which is my first ongoing also. My first ongoing. Rock Candy Mountain we could have theoretically been ongoing, but I had 8 issues. Like, I knew if I only got 8 issues, that would be the arc. And once we saw sales, like, I know it's only gonna be 8 issues. I knew, like, it is what it is, right? But it's like, I got to do the exact story I want to do. I think Rock Candy Mountain, to me, is nominated for an Eisner. Those are coming up. Hopefully I'm nominated again. It's perfect. It's because I got everything I want in there, because ultimately all good stories have a beginning, middle, end. This story has a beginning, middle, end. But frankly, by the nature of Rutherford Ranch, even if I reach that end, I could just pivot. There's just a pivot that happens, and it's something different, but it's still the same thing, right? And that's what I love about, like, because there's certain things that are important to me. Like, it's like, listen, it's not called Gabby and Trudy Go to Hell. It's called I Hate This Place. Like, will Gabby and Trudy make it to issue 18? I can't answer that. Right. I can't answer that. Because there's stakes. If people don't die, there's no danger, right? Right. That's not spoilers. We love Gabby and Trudy. They're so special. But the thing about a finite series is that I have that. Like, when we did Assassination, there's 2 characters that, as me and Erica were working on it, which is Dave and Fuck Tarkenton. And ultimately, Assassination very much became about these 2 guys who were the 2 worst hitmen on the list becoming like great friends. And like we realized very quickly like who the stars, even though it's really about these other two characters and sort of them going through this. One's doing a revenge, and the other one is sort of trying to find their place as a young woman in this complicated industry. Like we know people are here for the fucking Dave show, right? But like we were like, we could kill them. Like we had a long conversation about it. Like, dude, like we can kill them. Like we have that. There's not going to be. There's unlikely to be another run because Erica's busy. You know, she did it sort of a fill-in because she wanted to work with me, and we made something great. It's like we can kill these guys. We can kill everyone. But ultimately, like we love them too much. But I love how in a finite series, everyone can die. There's stakes, but the same for this. So I love a finite series because of that, because it's tight. You get in, you're getting a full story. It's exactly what's supposed to be dumb, right? But what I love about this is like I'm looking at this as, like maybe like how a horror TV show will evolve. Like the first season is what is Rutherford Ranch, and then the second season is who are these girls? You know what I mean? So each one's going to be very similar. It's all going to take place in this nightmare place. But I'm looking at it as like it's an escalation. Everything's going to escalate, and it's going to change a little bit, and that's super fascinating to me. And I said, you know, if on issue 5, no, that's not right. Let's say on issue 9, sales are still killer. That means those last 5 issues that I planned in my head, or the last 6 issues, which are the end, would be the theoretical end. They just move back, and I get to play with some new genre. I get to see something else in there, and that to me is really exciting. Also terrifying because, as I said, I don't like to see the pants it. It means I have to figure out a whole new thing. But I'm down for it. Like, I hope that's the case. I hope I do. Like, you know, my favorite series, we talked about this earlier, my favorite comic series, not 1 to 10, but they're always those maxi series. Preacher, Why the Last Man, Lock and Key, Bone, even. Six Gun. Six Gun's a crazy good maxi series that no one talks about. It's brilliant. It's one of the best comic series ever. No one ever talks about it. I love those because it's the same as that finite series. It's that tight little thing, right? Except for they're like, no, we did it 10 times. And I love that too. And I hope that that's something I get to do with this book, because I can't do it. It's like, I can't Walking Dead this book. I don't have like the bandwidth, but could I do 50 issues? I bet I could. Can I do 18 issues when I've never done 18 issues except for Rick and Morty? Love Rick and Morty. I can do that. I can do Rick and Morty. I am Rick and Morty. But I don't think I could do. I couldn't do 200 issues of this book, but I could do 50, and I think it'd be a great 50 issues. I think it'd also be a great 18 issues if that's all it is. I really hope I get to 18 issues. It'll be 24, and I'll be like, man, that third part wasn't great. I wasn't ready for it. But yeah, I like both. But I'm excited about it because, like I said, we're going to hopefully get to spend more than just like a minute with these characters.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, well, that's once again a really long answer.
The investment that you've made just in the first issue alone, getting us to care about them and to care about their relationship, I mean, just goes to prove that. I'm personally really interested to find out more about Trudy's upbringing as a survivalist.
Yeah,
because I'm sure that took some pretty deep research.
Oh, well, you know, you remember they used to have all those doomsday prepper shows on like Nat Geo, and I watch all those shows, and I'm like, look at these crazy people, and I'm like, do I need potable water? Like, what is potable water? Do I need to? So there's a lot of that. I may or may not have gotten some magazines from the Rural King that seemed very thematic, and I'm like, well, this is very both. That second arc stuff, you know, I was talking to my editor because we thought we might Artyom, who's the artist, it's his first major work in America. He did a anthology, for like ice cream anthology. Like, he really hasn't done any. I mean, he hasn't done a series. He's young, and there's concerns his country may or may not be at war right now about whether or not we might not get, like, we might have to put in a fill-in issue. And I was like, man, there's a fill-in issue I really want to do, but it's weird, and I couldn't do it early because it's literally, I just want to do their lives, each of their lives leading up to when they meet, because they have really interesting backstories. Trudy's is extremely interesting and leads into sort of the major arc of the second issue of how she was raised. They both didn't have great family lives, which is why I think their love, like how much they care for each other, is really special. because they moved around a lot. I can't remember what's in issue 1. Issue 2, they sort of go together to me. They had bad lives before they met each other, and like I think a lot of people have something that's similar to that, where like I know for me and my wife, like I wasn't happy until I met my wife, you know, and how I think in many ways she was the same way, and it wasn't that. That's what happens when you. It's like that's just like everything in your life again leads to this point, right?
Right.
Like we just happen to fit together, and that's how it is with them. Yeah, they had terrible. Their lives were terrible in a lot of ways before they met each other. And I hope I get to tell that story again. 18 issues, guys. 18 issues with one weird entirely flashback issue. That's okay. I think you guys will like that. If it was television, you guys would lose your mind for that flashback.
Oh hell yeah!
Love a good flashback. Well, who doesn't love a good flashback? I mean,
I love flashbacks.
We do a whole show with nothing but flashbacks.
So, Artyom Topolin, how did you find this young whippersnapper for your book? Because
oh man, so
art's great.
They're real good, and I don't think they speak English, so I can really say whatever I want, and they'll never know. But like this first issue is good. But to me, I look at it, and I as someone who's made comics, like drawn comics, like I'd be like, they're challenged by the format, maybe the script, like they didn't work script. Issue 2, dude, they get their feet underneath them. Like Artyom is like full speed in issue 2, and by issue 3, like he's killing it. So like I can see things in issue 1 is like that's a little choppy. Like it's I don't say rush, but it's like it's not even rush is the right word, but it's beautiful. He's so good. Here's how it works. Because I get asked a lot, and there's no good way to answer. Like, oh, how did you and Artyom come up with this? Like Artyom, no, I came up with the idea. I pitched the book. The book got approved. I think I wrote like several issues, and we're like, we got to find an artist. Right? And so we're looking for a certain type of artist. We're going through everyone. We asked some people we couldn't afford. And basically, at some point, Kirkman said to John, have you seen this guy's art? I really like it. And we looked at it and we're like, we think Artyom would kill on this book. He sets a really nice tone, like an environmental tone. And that's hard to do. It's really hard to do. It's a little bit off direct market aesthetic, which I personally really like. For some people to turn off, but I think it works. I think like they're real good. And you know, John Moisen's always like people are gonna try to take Artyom off this book. He's like that's how big we think this book. Artyom's gonna do such a good job, and this book's gonna be so visible. People are gonna be like, when is Artyom available? It's like Artyom has a percentage of, you know, like, so I don't think he's going anywhere necessarily. Like he has a piece of the pie, so to speak. But yeah, basically Kirkman was like, have you guys seen this guy? And we went through so many people, and it was a real struggle. Because you don't want to work with just anybody, you know, like,
sure.
I've always worked with people I know. Erica Henderson, I met at my first convention. Chris Schweitzer, I met at the same convention and became one of my best friends. I've really not worked with people I don't know, or worked with like Mark Ellerby on Rick and Morty was there from the beginning. Like we worked 60 issues together, you know. It's like you know each other and you like each other, you figure it out. So working with someone who's a complete unknown, who basically had no work to even reference, but he had this great Venom illustration on his Twitter, and we're like, this guy is good. We want him. His art, and it's not hyperbole. And I think anyone's going, oh, let me tell you about the artist. It only gets better and better. Like no joke. Like Artyom gets better and better. That Horn Man design is so good. There's a scary bit in issue 2 that I was like, man, this is gonna be hard to pull off because it involves being able to tell a story in a certain way. Nope, he killed it. He nailed it. Every time we get pages from him, man, almost every time I'm like, this is good. Like this choice he made here is good. So yeah, Artyom's great. Lee Lawton, who's the colorist, who colored Deadly Class, is killing it. Like they go together very nicely.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, the book doesn't look like anything else, but I think in a good way, in terms of the colors are sort of bright and I dare I say garish. That doesn't seem the right word, The colors
No,
would be like
there's
there's
a,
there's a good word to say it, but it's like they're bright and they're sort of pastel, and they sort of contradict each other. It's like the colors are unnerving, you know. And I think like all of it makes it really visually interesting. It really sets the tone for Rutherford Ranch, and I'm lucky to be able to work with both of them. I have to work with John. They assigned him to me, so.
Well,
Sorry,
John
John doesn't watch these interviews. Not this far. I'm safe.
Yeah.
You got and then you got
John.
Pat Rousseau on letters. I mean, shit. That's you got some damn good talent
Great
happening.
package.
So if we've gone through the elevator pitch, and I think if anyone listening to this isn't sold on this book at this point, then I don't know why you've been listening. But I just have to tell you, Kyle, this comic really is cool. My hat's off to you and the whole creative team, because it definitely stands out among the crowd. Like there's so many books that come out, and it's like, okay, this was good, but I'll wait for the trade, right? Or whatever. But this, like, I want to read the second issue right now.
I love hearing it. Hearing it. I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you. I got it. Tell Skybound. They'll send it. I'll send it to you. You have to send me your email though. Send me an email. I'll send it to you.
Yeah. Well,
no, you retweeted me. I'll just send it. I'll send you a Dropbox. So my aforementioned Chris Weisser always said to me, like, he's like, your endings aren't very good. He's like, the endings of your comics always sort of tell people what's going to happen in the next comic and just assume that they want to read the next comic. And I'm like, well, if they're reading my book, that means they're a fan of me. I think that's the case. So I like to sort of like, I like to put like a chocolate on the pillow and be like, look at this delicious treat that's forthcoming, right? But for this, it's a horror book. So, you want to end on not a cliffhanger. I don't think a cliffhanger. You want to end on a question. And I think I did.
Oh, you definitely did.
Oh, for issue number one.
I don't want to spoil the ending of the first issue, but
for issue number one, I nailed it. I think even before the ending where they listen to the rules for the ranch.
Yep.
If I stopped there, I think it would have been a good ending. But I think I successfully do that for all 5 of these issues, and I want to continue to do that. Where when you get to that last one, you go, all right, well, I got to see what's next. Like, I got to see what's going to happen next, and I'm really proud of that. So to hear that is great.
Oh, dude, yeah,
I love
that X factor on the last page. Wow,
yeah, we love it. Yeah, put a slasher in your haunted monster entity book. Why not?
Why the heck not?
Works great.
So
yeah, I love to hear that, man. Like I said, I have a lot of anxiety about it, but that's what everyone said. The numbers were good, so hopefully word of mouth is good. As everyone keeps telling me, it's my biggest launch ever. I finally did it, guys. I finally sold some comic books. So I love hearing it, and I really, let's sell out issue 1, right? Let's get weird. Let me do like a weird variant cover that is a demonic spell book. I don't know what you do.
There you go. The ranch's own Necronomicon.
Yeah, so, we love it.
Summon the good demon. I'm game. This is good.
Absolutely. Well, Kyle, thank you so much for hanging out with us this evening. The book is I Hate This Place, aka Fuck This Place.
Yeah.
Or I Hate It Here. Excuse me. I butchered your comic title.
No, I Hate This Place. Fuck This Place. You did it. That's the name. That's the name.
And it goes on sale from Skybound and Image next Wednesday, May 18th.
The 18th.
Do not sleep on this book. Do not wait for the trade. It is good stuff.
Literally the nicest thing people can say. Literally the nicest thing you say about someone's comic book. We love it. I love it.
I'm telling you,
listen. And everyone's gonna want to get that dirty title. And I want to say again, you gotta pre-order it. You unless your store is super cool, and they're like, we love the F-bomb. They're not going to have, we love the F this place, but I hate this place too. They call it whatever you want. I don't care.
Sure.
But I know if it was me, I'd want that original title. And
all you do
is have to tell the store that you want it, and they'll just get it. Like, that's it. That's all you have to do. We also love pre-orders. We love pre-orders a lot.
Oh, pre-orders are great. I think I'm pre-ordered up through issue 4 right now. Whatever the latest one that's available through previews. So
probably. I don't know.
So,
no idea.
all right, that is our show for the week. Kyle Starks, thank you so very much. Thank you to the wonderful people at Skybound for helping set this up.
Yeah.
And
Thanks, Shannon.
Shannon.
She's great.
I will end it as I always do by saying, the world can be a crappy place, but it doesn't have to be. Get out there, read something cool, support your local comic book store, and above all else, be good to each other. Thank you so much for listening.
Great.